Yeah. And it's perfectly okay if you sometimes say, this is, I'm not really able to answer that. Let's see. And we'll go just as the other rounds, and I'll start with the question and leave you time to sort of be ready with yours, and then we'll have some questions from the floor as well. So I would like to start with the question for you, Gakyan, and perhaps for you as well. And really, we talked about the opportunities. You also talked about this as a business agenda. So we talked about export previously, and how big really do you see the potential is for export solutions for Norwegian industry? And I don't know, perhaps it's a question for you as a starting point, and maybe you want to tip in. Should be ready. Yeah.
If you only look at the companies that are into bottle deposit, I think currently not even 15% of the world is covered under bottle deposit schemes, but PET bottles are in each and every country of the world. So, and companies like Tomra, there are other companies making RVM machines, Infinitum, there are various other players like that. They have huge potential to look at developing markets because we don't have the system, we don't have the expertise, we've not done it before. You've done it for probably, 20 years. In just one segment, there is so much potential available, let alone sorting, let alone collection. So in the whole gamut, I feel there is a huge potential. It's just adaptability, which I feel Norwegian companies should start looking at that as a mindset. Adaptability in terms of pricing, in terms of production in other countries. And then I think the world kind of opens up. But I would just to answer in short, it's huge.
And what does that take? I mean, perhaps because you're a company that are in many different places of the world. So what does it take? That sort of, we just need to adapt. Seems really simple, but I'm guessing it's perhaps not a straightforward thing. So, I mean, do you have any sort of input on what does it actually take to say, okay, we have a Tomra solution or Infinitum solution or whatever that we just need to expand to solve some of the problems we heard on early on?
I can say that we try to convince.
You need to talk close to the
phone. We
try
try to convince in the other countries that we are in, and we try to convince that our Norwegian principles and the Norwegian way to do things are the best. It's not easy.
No.
No. And but we have some we have some principles. For instance, we have some ethical rules and some guidelines that we are obliged to follow, of course. And that also can be challenging in many parts of the world. So, but when it comes to circular economy and waste handling, we are trying to handle waste and materials and recycling the best way we can, with reference to the Norwegian way to do it. And I don't say that we succeed always, but we try to do it, and we also try to minimize the environmental and the climate impact.
But what do you think, in your experience, what's the most important thing then to focus on when you come out to one of your new plants somewhere and you want to implement that sort of mindset or solution? What's the key thing to focus on? Is it pure culture? Is it people to meet? Is it the dialogue? Is it the translation of the technology to the surroundings? Or what's the core of this? Is it technical
what
or
I've seen is that
process?
The Norwegian way to do this is appreciated, because we see that a lot of other companies don't do this. They don't bother at all, or they don't bother so much. So
there is room for it.
I think we have some what do you call it? We get credit for doing this this way.
Yeah.
And we are always appreciated that we do this, because
so I hear that Norway is actually a good platform coming from Norway to go out here with some of these.
Has a good reputation in the world.
Well, that's a good starting point. We have some questions, I believe. You will start.
We have a couple of questions from the floor, but I'm going to steal my chance first. Firstly, massive kudos, Ellie, for stepping in on like zero notice and doing it in a whole nother language, unsuspectingly. So hats off to you. I think everyone agree here. Everyone in this room wants to contribute towards the government's vision of Norway being a pioneer in the circular economy. And there has been a lot of theme that we want to get going. We want to speed the process up. And the roadmap or the strategy is a really important part of that. Can you say something about the timeline or when it's going to be delivered? And you said we have your voice heard, be involved and come input. How? How can we do that? How can the people in this room do that?
I think there are sort of two ways of doing that. One is to try to be active in the media and make this a topic that is talked about or is covered in the media. I think that's very important to make this as an important issue for people. And the second part of it is, and I think that's something that a lot of people can contribute with from different sectors. And the second part is to contact the Minister of Climate and Environment and make them, because a lot of organizations do that, so you're welcome to do that, and also politicians in the parliament, and be impatient, expect that. But when it comes to the actual timeline, it's said that it is supposed to be finished next year. So that's all I know, unfortunately. I'm very impatient, so I ask them all the time. Yeah.
Being impatient, I think that's a good keyword here.
But
yes.
be good, what do you call it, lobbyists.
Yep.
The people in this room might not necessarily be the best lobbyists, experts from all different fields. Not in politics, not necessarily good political lobbyists. So we have to, work that out somehow.
Yeah.
That's,
I guess, no, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hello, very good talks, everyone. So my name is Charlie Berto. I'm at UEA. Researcher there. We just developed a new research center on the circular economy. And I have two questions. One quite quick one for you, Jon Paus. So I'm from photovoltaics, actually, originally. So I'm very glad to see Equinor investing into renewable energy. You said that there is no recycling technology. I will disagree a bit, actually. So there might not be a lot here, but in Japan, for example, they have done a lot. So it will just come once enough solar plants will have to be dismantled. But just I know that you have invested a lot in Oxford PV. And basically we see that solar cells are getting just more and more complicated. And so they are not designed to be recycled. So do you have this focus as well with the Oxford PV? So that's my first question.
What's the second one? Let's get it right.
So the second one is for Ailey. I just read today that Norway's emissions have increased of 0.4% in 2018. Are we going fast enough in the transition? And so what's your opinion about that?
All right. Good. Start with you, Jon.
Yeah, that's true. There are some technologies for decommissioning solar panels, PV panels, but they are not very good. And as I showed, if I had 2 minutes left, I could show you that we have a project going on to identify technologies for decommissioning solar panels, and there is a huge need for that technology. As an example, I read that in Japan there are solar PV waste today that it will take 18 years to decommission and dismantle with the technology that are available today. And as we saw, the amount of PV waste is growing exponentially. Yes. And if we are going to handle that growing amount of PV waste, we have to have some new technologies. And there are some initiatives, and we are going to identify them and see if we can support. And our aim is to have that technology available, not to own it. So if we can we can be a part of a project development for PV panel decommissioning technology, that's the game for us.
Okay. So that's, I think, is what we would call an open invitation from a pretty powerful player with a need. So if anybody here has anything, I think it's good. So are we going fast enough?
Well, obviously not from my perspective, but we're doing the best we can. But when it comes to what you pointed out yesterday, the news that we have actually increased the, not very much, but a little increase in the CO2 emissions. That is because of the increase of use of palm oil as in the biofuel mix, which is, I don't know if you followed that discussion, but there's obviously a negative effect of using palm oil. So in a way, that's a good thing that it's been reduced, but the negative side of it is that the CO2 emissions have increased. But on the other side, I have to mention that like in the 5 largest city in Norway, the emissions from transport has decreased by 20% since 2009. So some good things are happening, and also like I talked about, we're talking about systematic changes, and it takes a little while. So I think we have to stay on our goals and just keep on.
A follow-up question,
yeah.
because I mean, what does it do? Does it reflect in the debate when you have an announcement like that from yesterday, saying, well, you know, because basically it's not really about whether or not we're decreasing a little bit or increasing a little bit. We need to decrease dramatically. So at any scale, we are not on track. So does it impact the discussions now that you are where you are? We're really, literally sitting and formulating what's going to be the roadmap, what's going to be the strategy. So when you have an input like that, is that kind of like, okay, whatever, and then you continue the discussion, or is it like, okay, are we actually at all discussing the right size of it? Input, or do we need to redistribute what we are thinking or rethink, or is it just like, you know, that's in the paper, whatever, we continue our political debates? What happens?
I think it depends on who you talk to, I
Yeah.
suppose. I mean, there are some political parties right now who have only one issue in their head, and that's they want to reduce the limitation of driving a private car. So that's going the completely different direction. But I think also that it's, if you take like an overall picture of the political parties at the parliament, I think there's an increasingly understanding of how important this issue is. It's not like just a few parties that are engaged in this, but if it's going quick enough, I don't know.
Okay, we have room for one more question from the floor. If there is somebody, yeah, there's somebody there.
I'm Letícia Nogueira from Norland Research Institute. I have a question about the roadmaps, because the roadmaps for green competitiveness that you mentioned, there will be a conference, I think it's 24th of June, to discuss it. The roadmaps, they are documents that the industries themselves crafted in order to say what they need and how they can contribute to advancing climate goals. And as far as I understand, in this conference, it will be discussed to what extent the industries themselves are following the roadmaps. But to what extent do the roadmaps collectively advance the climate goals of Norway? Because they are industry-based, and these synergies across the different industries is less discussed. And I think, of course, it's important to know where industries are in their own roadmaps, but the roadmaps in relation to the climate goals as a whole has not been as discussed.
Okay.
Was that a question? I'm sorry, I cannot answer that, but I would recommend that you sign up for the conference. I'm not involved in that, so I don't know.
All right.
Sorry.
Really, very relevant question,
Yes.
but I think apparently we need to address it somewhere else, given the
yeah,
situation. But thank you
sorry.
for it anyway. I would like to end with a question that's for all of you, actually, and that's, we have what is the role of government and what's the role of business to succeeding in this transition? Because sometimes one point to the other, but so that's now in the same room, and we have all these people in here as well, and we've been debating this for 24 hours now. What's really who has to do what? What's the best collaboration we can have between that? So I don't know who wants to go first, but I would like to have an input from all of you, if you can, about what's really the balance and the role of business versus government. Who wants to go first? Gaki, yeah?
I'll give this from an India perspective, and it may
Yeah.
sound cliche, but till Indian companies are not penalized, they do not go forward. And even a green shift in mindset of companies has come only for the listed companies who have international presence, because they have to package well, they have to brand themselves well. The moment Mumbai put a blanket ban on single-use plastic, everybody woke up. So for the government, it is to stop thinking of vote bank politics, at least in the Indian context. It may not be true at the Norwegian context, but for India and maybe a few other similar countries, for example Indonesia, if they stop thinking of vote bank politics, look at the Greta Thunbergs of the world and look at what developed countries are showing you right now, and move in the right direction for policy, because we are still lacking behind in policy.
That's a clear message. Yes, who wants to go next?
I think a combination of economical incentives and revised or new business models could be a way to go. I don't think we should make laws forbidding everything, but I think that if there is a good business case, it might be a help to get there, as we do in Norway with electrical cars. Now we have, I think, over 100,000, 200,000 cars in Norway. And without the incentives from the authorities, it wouldn't have been that much at all. But then, okay, we are driving the society, the technology development in the right direction. And I think it has to be something in it for the business to drive the transition.
Yeah.
I think so.
Okay. And then back to Parliament to have ended.
Well,
What do you think?
As I said earlier, I think it's we all have to work from our different perspectives on this, and the politicians need to allocate money for both research and development, for technology development. That's very important. And as I said, for startups to get help to start and lower the barrier for people with good ideas to be able to actually make them happen. And also, of course, as I mentioned many times, the tax system, it's a financial issue. What should be the price of CO2 emissions, for example? It's very important, and that's political issue. And then on the other hand, or we have a good example when it comes to the new ferries in Norway, where the local government has procured electrical ferries to replace the old ones that were polluting a lot. And then that gives the shipping industry a good opportunity to develop new technology and be forerunners in that. So it's like a good mix of
So
public
there's
and
clearly a
private.
role for both sectors, and
Yeah.
it's about getting the optimal interplay.
Yeah,
Really,
and there's a
behind it.
lot of opportunities in that collaboration.
Well, lots of opportunities in that collaboration. I think we'll end there. I think that's a good place to end. Thank you all for being part of the presentation here. And a small gift for you as well. You have heard what it is, and so have you in the previous. You have not. This is for you to sort of flash a bit more. When you're out shopping with your, of course, already reusable shopping bag, this is for when you do buy your apples or stuff or whatever, to use that reusable plastic bag for produce as well. Thank you so much for your time, and yeah, you were winning. Fantastic. Okay.